Blood and power mean nothing when you watch the woman who gave you life be torn down by vipers. He had the city by the throat, yet he stood in the shadows, waiting, until a girl with nothing to lose stepped into the crossfire, changing his empire forever. The crystal chandeliers of the Waldorf Grand Ballroom cast a fractured, icy light over the social elite of New York. It was the annual Bowmont Charity Gala, a shimmering facade where the city's wealthiest gathered to drink vintage champagne and quietly negotiate the city's underground power structures. Standing on the shadowed mezzanine, cloaked in the darkness away from the flashing cameras, was Leonardo Rossi. At 32, Leonardo was the undisputed head of the Rossi syndicate. He was a man of lethal precision, sharp angles, and cold, calculating eyes. He didn't care for galas. He cared for control. But tonight, he had made an exception for one person, his mother, Isabella. Isabella Rossi had once been the formidable matriarch of the family, a woman whose grace commanded respect from mayors and mobsters alike. But time and illness are cruel masters. Early onset Alzheimer's had begun to fracture her brilliant mind. Tonight, in a rare moment of lucidity, she had begged Leonardo to take her to the gala. She wanted to wear her favorite vintage Dior gown, to hear the orchestra, to feel alive one last time before the shadows in her mind consumed her completely. Leonardo had agreed, stationing his two most trusted men, Dante and Luca, at discreet distances. He himself stood above, watching the floor like a hawk, giving her the illusion of independence. Down below, Isabella smiled softly, holding a glass of sparkling water, admiring a floral arrangement. She looked fragile, her silver hair pinned up, her eyes wide with childlike wonder. That was when Camilla Bowmont struck. Camilla was the wife of Richard Bowmont, a wealthy real estate developer who laundered money for a rival faction. Camilla had always despised Isabella. 20 years ago, Isabella had publicly dismissed Camilla as a tasteless social climber. A slight Camilla had nurtured into a venomous grudge. Now, seeing the once great Isabella Rossi standing alone, looking bewildered, Camilla saw her chance for vengeance. Flanked by two sycophantic socialites, Camilla glided across the marble floor. Well. Camilla's voice pierced the ambient chatter, sharp and carrying. If it isn't the ghost of Isabella Rossi. Isabella turned, her brows knitting together in confusion. I'm sorry. Do I know you? Camilla let out a cruel, theatrical laugh. Oh, the poor thing's mind is completely gone, wandering around like a stray dog. Tell me, Isabella, do you even know what year it is? Or are you still pretending your husband isn't rotting in the ground? On the mezzanine, Leonardo's jaw clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. Dante shifted, reaching inside his tailored jacket. Hold, Leonardo whispered, his voice like cracked ice. Boss, Dante rasped, she's disrespecting your mother. I know, Leonardo replied, his eyes dark, sweeping over the crowd. Let's see who steps up. Let's see who our real friends are. Leonardo wanted a purge. He watched the surrounding guests, politicians he funded, judges he had in his pocket, capos who kissed his ring. They all saw what was happening. They all heard Camilla's vicious taunts. And every single one of them turned their heads, pretending not to notice. They were terrified of causing a scene, terrified of the Bowmont money, or simply amused by the fall of a giant. The absolute cowardice of high society was laid bare. Camilla, emboldened by the silence, stepped closer. You shouldn't be here, Isabella. You're an embarrassment. Deliberately, with a flick of her wrist, Camilla tipped her full glass of dark Pinot Noir. The red wine splashed violently across the bodice of Isabella's pristine white Dior gown, looking horribly like blood. Isabella gasped, her hands trembling as she touched the wet stain. The confusion in her eyes melted into profound, heartbreaking humiliation. Tears welled up as the socialite snickered. Oops, Camilla smirked. Looks like you've made a mess. Typical. Leonardo took a step forward, the lethal intent rolling off him in waves. He was going to burn the entire building down. But before his foot hit the first marble stair, a sudden movement broke the agonizing tableau. A young woman in the stark black and white uniform of the catering staff pushed her way through the circle of gawking elites. It was Khloe Jenkins. Khloe was 23, exhausted, and working her third double shift of the week to keep the heat on in her dilapidated Brooklyn apartment. She didn't know who Isabella Rossi was. She didn't know the political ramifications of the room. All she saw was a terrified old woman being bullied by a monster in diamonds. Without a second thought, Khloe slammed her heavy silver serving tray down onto a nearby cocktail table, shattering 2 champagne flutes. The sharp noise made the crowd jump. She marched straight up to Camilla and shoved her back by the shoulder. "What is wrong with you?" Khloe demanded, her voice ringing out with furious, unpolished authority. Camilla stumbled, her jaw dropping in shock. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am, you little peasant?" "I don't care if you're the Queen of England," Khloe snapped, pulling a clean linen napkin from her apron and gently wrapping it around Isabella's trembling shoulders. "You're a pathetic, cruel bully, picking on a defenseless woman. You should be ashamed of yourself." The ballroom went dead silent. The music seemed to stutter and die. You could hear a pin drop on the marble floor. Khloe turned her back to the billionaire's wife, shielding Isabella. Her voice softened instantly as she looked at the older woman. "It's okay, ma'am. Let's get you cleaned up." "Don't listen to a word this miserable woman says." Up on the mezzanine, Leonardo Rossi froze. The rage that had been boiling in his veins was suddenly pierced by absolute electric shock. A nobody. A maid. A girl making minimum wage had just thrown herself onto a grenade to protect a woman she didn't even know, while men with millions in the bank looked away. The silence in the ballroom didn't last. It shattered the moment. Mr. Higgins, the frantic head of the catering company, came sprinting across the room, his face flushed purple with panic. "What is the meaning of this?" Mr. Higgins shrieked, looking at the spilled wine and the furious Camilla Bowmont. This creature just assaulted me," Camilla hissed, pointing a manicured, trembling finger at Khloe. "She assaulted me and threw a tantrum." She poured wine on an elderly woman. Khloe fired back, not backing down an inch. "I stepped in because the rest of these cowards were just watching." "Silence!" Mr. Higgins roared, terrified of losing the Bowmont account. He grabbed Khloe by the arm, yanking her away from Isabella. "You are fired! Khloe, hand over your apron and get out of this building immediately. Mrs. Bowmont, I am so incredibly sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, Higgins," a new voice echoed. It was quiet. It wasn't a yell, but the baritone timbre of it sliced through the chaos like a straight razor. The crowd parted instantly. It wasn't a polite stepping aside. It was a desperate, panicked scrambling. Men physically shoved their wives out of the way to clear a path. Leonardo Rossi descended the grand staircase. He moved with the slow, deliberate grace of an apex predator. His tailored black suit absorbed the light, and his dark eyes were fixed entirely on Camilla. Dante and Luca flanked him, radiating sheer violence. As Leonardo stepped into the center of the circle, the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. The arrogance drained from Camilla's face in an instant, replaced by a pale, sickening terror. She finally realized who the ghost was. Mr. Rossi," Mr. Higgins stammered, bowing so deeply he nearly folded in half. Leonardo didn't even look at him. He walked straight up to his mother. He gently touched Isabella's cheek, his thumb wiping away a stray tear. "Are you all right, Mama?" he asked softly in Italian. "Leo," Isabella whispered, clinging to his sleeve. She ruined the dress your father bought me." Leonardo nodded slowly. He finally turned his gaze to Camilla. Richard Bowmont, Camilla's husband, came running from the bar, sweat pouring down his forehead. "Leonardo! Leo! Please! It's a misunderstanding." She didn't know. "Shut up, Richard!" Leonardo said. The command was so absolute that Richard snapped his mouth shut. Trembling, Leonardo stepped into Camilla's personal space. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't have to. "You think my mother is an embarrassment, Camilla?" he asked, his voice a deadly whisper. "You think she's a ghost?" I. Camilla couldn't breathe. "You stained a dress that held my mother's memories," Leonardo continued. "So, here is what is going to happen. Tomorrow morning, Richard is going to sign over the deed to the Bowmont Tower, to the Rossi Holding Company. If he doesn't, you will both be actual ghosts before lunch. Do we understand each other? Do we understand each other?" Richard whimpered, nodding frantically. Camilla began to sob. "Good," Leonardo said coldly. "Now, get on your knees." Camilla blinked, tears ruining her mascara. "What?" "Get on your knees," and use your designer gown to wipe the floor where my mother's tears fell," Leonardo commanded. The entire room watched in horrific fascination as Camilla Bowmont, the undisputed queen of high society, sank to her knees in her $10,000 dress and began to frantically dab at the spilled wine on the marble. Leonardo turned away, dismissing her existence entirely. He looked at Mr. Higgins. "You," he pointed. "Yes. Mr. Rossi? You just fired the only person in this room with a spine," Leonardo said. "Dante, buy his catering company. Higgins, you're fired. Get out." Before Higgins could process the fact that his life's work had just been hostilely taken over in 10 seconds, Leonardo turned his attention to the girl in the black and white uniform. Khloe was standing rigidly, clutching her apron. Her heart was hammering violently against her ribs. She wasn't stupid. She had heard the whispers in the kitchen. She knew exactly who Leonardo Rossi was. He was the devil of New York, and he was looking right at her. "What is your name?" Leonardo asked, stepping toward her. The terrifying aura around him hadn't faded, but the way he looked at her was intensely analytical. "Khloe," she said, lifting her chin, determined not to let him see her shake. "Khloe Jenkins." "You put your hands on the wife of a billionaire to protect my mother," Leonardo stated. It wasn't a question. "I put my hands on a bully," Khloe corrected him, her voice tight. "I didn't know she was your mother. I would have done it for anyone." A tiny, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at the corner of Leonardo's mouth. "I believe you," he gestured toward the grand exit. "Come with us, Khloe Jenkins." No," Khloe said, taking a step back. "I need to get my things from the locker room. I need to find a new job, seeing as you just made a massive spectacle of firing my boss." Dante let out a low growl at her disrespect, but Leonardo raised a hand, stopping him. "You don't need a new job. You already have one," Leonardo said smoothly. "You're coming to the estate. My mother needs a personal companion, someone who isn't afraid of monsters." He didn't wait for her answer. He gently guided his mother toward the exit, his bodyguards falling in line. Khloe stood frozen for a second, looking at the stunned, terrified crowd, and then at the retreating back of the Mafia boss. She had a mountain of debt back home. She had a loan shark threatening her family by Friday. With a deep breath, she untied her apron, dropped it on the floor next to the sobbing Camilla, and followed the devil out the door. The Rossi estate in Sands Point, Long Island, was less of a home and more of a heavily fortified castle. Wrought iron gates, biometric security scanners, and armed guards patrolling the perimeter stood in stark contrast to the breathtaking beauty of the oceanfront property. For Khloe Jenkins, transitioning from a crumbling Brooklyn walk-up to a sprawling mansion overlooking the Long Island Sound was like stepping onto another planet. She was given a suite in the East Wing, a wardrobe of tailored clothes, and a salary that made her eyes water. Her only duty was to be a companion to Isabella Rossi. It turned out to be the easiest job Khloe had ever held. Beneath the fog of Alzheimer's, Isabella was a woman of immense warmth, sharp wit, and a deep love for classical music. They spent their days in the sunroom, with Khloe reading Italian poetry she was barely learning to pronounce, or sitting by the grand piano while Isabella played hauntingly beautiful Chopin nocturnes from memory. But the real complication of her new life was Leonardo. The undisputed boss of the Rossi syndicate was a phantom in his own home. He left before dawn and returned long after sunset, conducting his ruthless business in the shadows of New York City. Yet, Khloe felt his presence everywhere. She caught him watching her from the doorway of the library, his dark eyes entirely unreadable. He commanded rooms with a terrifying silence, men twice his age bowing to his every whim. But when he spoke to Khloe, his voice lost its icy edge. The tension between them broke 3 weeks into her employment. Khloe was sitting on the terrace overlooking the water, clutching her cheap cell phone. Her hands were shaking. On the other end of the line was Mickey Sullivan, a notorious loan shark operating out of Hell's Kitchen. Before the gala, Khloe had borrowed $10,000 from him to pay for her father's funeral and keep her younger sister in nursing school. She had fallen behind on the exorbitant interest. "I know you ain't serving crab cakes anymore, Khloe," Mickey's gravelly voice sneered through the speaker. "Word on the street is you got scooped up by the big leagues. So, the price just went up. 50 grand by Friday, or I pay your little sister at NYU a visit." Khloe's breath caught in her throat. "Mickey, please. I have the original 10, plus the interest. Just Give me 2 days. A large, calloused hand suddenly reached over her shoulder and plucked the phone from her fingers. Khloe gasped, spinning around to see Leonardo standing right behind her. He wore a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal dark ink snaking up his forearms. His expression was a terrifying mask of calm. He brought the phone to his ear. "Mickey Sullivan," Leonardo said. It wasn't a shout. It was a low, vibrating purr of pure menace. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. "This is Leonardo Rossi," he continued, his eyes locked on Khloe's pale face. "You just threatened a woman under my roof. I am going to give you exactly 30 minutes to pack a bag and leave New York. If you are still in the 5 boroughs when the clock strikes 6, Dante will find you, and I will personally mount your head on the hood of my car. Do you understand?" The line went dead. Leonardo casually tossed the phone over the stone balcony. It shattered on the rocks below, swept away by the ocean tide. "Hey!" Khloe yelled, her fear momentarily eclipsed by outrage. "I needed that phone, and you can't just do that. He's a dangerous man, Leonardo." "He's a rat," Leonardo corrected her, stepping closer. The scent of bergamot and expensive tobacco washed over her. "And he is no longer your problem. Your debt is paid. The man who held it no longer exists in your world." "I didn't ask for your help," she fired back, tilting her chin up to meet his intense gaze. "I am your mother's companion. I am not your charity case. And I am certainly not one of your soldiers you can just manage." Leonardo stopped, mere inches from her. For a moment, the dangerous Mafia boss completely disappeared, replaced by a man utterly captivated. Most people cowered when he spoke. They trembled and agreed. This girl, in a simple sundress, was standing toe-to-toe with him, demanding her autonomy. He slowly reached up, his knuckles brushing lightly against her cheek. The touch sent a jolt of electricity straight down her spine. "You are right," Leonardo murmured, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "You are not a soldier. You are the only person in my life who looks at me and sees a man instead of a monster. I didn't handle Sullivan for charity, Khloe. I did it because what belongs to me, I protect. And make no mistake, I am fiercely protective of you." Before she could process the weight of his words, Dante appeared in the doorway, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Boss, we have a problem. It's Victor Romano." The tender moment shattered. Leonardo's eyes hardened back to black ice. The Romano family was the syndicate Richard Bowmont had been laundering money for. By seizing the Bowmont Tower, Leonardo hadn't just humiliated a billionaire. He had cut off a major financial artery for a rival crime family. "What is it?" Leonardo asked, stepping away from Khloe. "Romano is making noise," Dante reported grimly. "He feels insulted. Word is, he's looking to balance the scales." Leonardo straightened his cuffs, the lethal apex predator returning instantly. "Let him try. Double the guard on the perimeter. No one goes in or out without my authorization." As Leonardo walked away, Khloe felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. The gilded cage was beautiful, but she was slowly realizing that she was locked inside a war zone. A week later, the tension in the estate had reached a boiling point, but Isabella Rossi's health took precedence. She had a scheduled appointment at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan for a groundbreaking, highly confidential neurological treatment. Leonardo, busy organizing a massive preemptive strike against the Romano family's shipping docks, couldn't go. He sent Khloe, flanked by Dante and a heavily armed 4-man detail in 2 bulletproof Cadillac Escalades. "Keep her close, Dante," Leonardo had ordered that morning, his hand lingering on Khloe's waist a second longer than necessary. "Trust no one." The drive to Mount Sinai was smooth. They used the underground VIP parking garage, a sprawling, dimly lit concrete cavern designed for celebrities and high-profile patients. Dr. Harrington, Isabella's trusted neurologist of 10 years, was waiting at the private elevator. "Mrs. Rossi, right this way," Dr. Harrington smiled warmly, holding his clipboard. Khloe guided Isabella forward, but something felt wrong. The hairs on the back of Khloe's neck stood up. She noticed Dr. Harrington's hands were shaking violently. He kept glancing nervously toward a row of parked maintenance vans. "Trust no one." Leonardo's voice echoed in her mind. "Dante," Khloe whispered sharply, stopping in her tracks. It was too late. Dr. Harrington suddenly dropped his clipboard and bolted toward the stairwell. "Ambush!" Dante roared, drawing his weapon. The back doors of the maintenance vans flew open. A dozen men wearing tactical gear and ski masks poured out, wielding automatic weapons. The deafening roar of gunfire shattered the silence of the garage. Concrete dusted the air as bullets tore into the side of the Escalades. "Get down!" Khloe screamed, tackling Isabella to the cold asphalt behind the armored engine block of their vehicle. Dante and the guards returned fire, a chaotic, bloody symphony echoing off the low ceilings. Two of Leonardo's men went down instantly. Dante was hit in the shoulder, cursing violently as he reloaded with one hand. "They have us pinned," Dante yelled to Khloe over the gunfire. "They aren't trying to kill us. They're trying to take her." Khloe peeked around the tire. The Romano hitmen were advancing, laying down suppressive fire. They wanted Isabella as a hostage to force Leonardo's hand. Panic threatened to choke Khloe, but survival instinct took over. She looked into the Escalade. The driver was slumped over the steering wheel, dead, but the engine was still running. The heavy, armored door was swinging open. "Isabella, look at me." Khloe grabbed the terrified older woman's face. "I need you to climb into the back floorboard. Do not move. Do you understand?" Isabella nodded, crying. Khloe shoved her into the back, crawling over the center console into the driver's seat. She had never driven a massive armored SUV in her life, but she jammed her foot on the brake and threw the heavy gear shift into drive. "Dante, get in!" Khloe screamed. Dante fired 2 more shots, dropping a masked man, and threw himself into the passenger seat just as Khloe slammed her foot down on the accelerator. The 3-ton Escalade roared like a wounded beast. Khloe didn't steer away from the attackers. She steered directly into them. She rammed the lead maintenance van at 40 miles an hour. The sheer force of the collision sent sparks flying and metal crumpling, crushing 2 of the hitmen against a concrete pillar and clearing the path to the exit. Gunfire rained against the reinforced glass, spiderwebbing the windshield, but it held. Khloe blindly navigated the winding ramps, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, until they burst out of the garage into the blinding afternoon sunlight of Manhattan. She didn't stop driving until they reached a secure Rossi safe house in Queens, where she finally slammed it into park and broke down sobbing. 30 minutes later, the door to the safe house didn't just open. It was nearly ripped off its hinges. Leonardo stormed in. He was covered in blood, none of it his own, and his eyes were wild with a feral, unhinged terror. He had torn through the city the second he heard the news, executing Victor Romano in his own office, before rushing to Queens. He saw his mother sitting safely on the sofa, drinking tea, completely unharmed. Then he saw Khloe, sitting at the kitchen island, her hands covered in cuts from broken glass, shaking silently. Leonardo crossed the room in 2 massive strides. He dropped to his knees in front of her, uncaring of his expensive suit, and grabbed her face in his hands. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his voice cracking with an emotion he hadn't felt in decades. "Khloe, look at me. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she choked out, tears spilling over her lashes. "Dante got hit, but he's going to live. I got her out, Leo. I got her out." Leonardo exhaled a shuddering breath, pressing his forehead against hers. "You saved my world today," he whispered fiercely. "Dr. Harrington sold us out to Romano. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't fought back—" "I'm not a coward," she sniffled, leaning into his touch. "No," Leonardo said, pulling back to look deep into her eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy, blindingly beautiful Cartier diamond ring, placing it on the counter between them. "You are a queen. My queen. The Maid uniform is gone forever, Khloe. I don't just want you as a companion for my mother. I want you by my side. I want you to run this empire with me. If you'll have me." Khloe looked at the ring, then at the ruthless Mafia boss kneeling on the linoleum floor for her. She had started the month desperate, pouring cheap wine to survive. Now, she held the heart of the most dangerous man in New York in the palm of her hand. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed his tie, pulling him up into a fierce, desperate kiss. "I'll have you," she whispered against his lips. "But I'm driving from now on." Did this story of courage and power leave you breathless? If you loved watching Khloe defy the elite and steal the heart of a mafia king, we have more thrilling tales waiting for you. Please hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel today. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next epic real-life drama story update now.